Hey guys, it's Utani here, and today I want to talk about the Wolf, which is a Mimitar assault frigate. The Wolf is actually surprisingly a lot better than I thought it would be. I actually had a lot of fun flying this ship. I think it's definitely one of the more underrated assault frigates. So the fit that I'm running is 4 200mm autocannons in the high slots, and then have a compact Nosferatu to drain capacitor when I'm up close, because the capacitor on the Wolf is really bad. In fact, the Wolf actually has worse cap than the Claw, which is an interceptor, which is quite surprising. Compact Microwarpdrive and a faint scope scram, just standard mids really. I'm running a Federation Navy 200mm plate here. That just gives you a really nice armor buffer, brings it almost up to 2000 hit points. I'm also running a small ancillary armor repairer. The cap on the Wolf is bad, but combined with the Nosferatu and the fact that you have low base cap, you can almost always suck cap from another ship. And you can run the small ancillary for even more repair. Then just a Tech 2 damage control. Again, almost 1000 structures. Just nice overall. Also builds up your resists. A Gyrostabilizer for DPS. And then I'm running the Refuge adaptive nanoplating just to give extra resistances. I'm also running a Tech 2 anti-explosive pump to bring up the explosive resistance. My lowest resist is kinetic at 50%. What you could do if you wanted to, if you're worried about the kind of a hole, it's not really a hole though because you have 50% resists, but you could change this to a kinetic rig and then change this adaptive nanoplating to a A-type explosive plating instead, if you wanted to have a more uniform resistance profile but lower resists overall. Combined, and also the small projectile burst Aerator 2 for just more DPS, gyro, and Tech 2 radar fire rig to get some DPS out of it. The Wolf actually does a lot of DPS. It's not quite the same as the Enu, the Enu and the Harpy, obviously, because they use blasters. But the Wolf does have respectable DPS. Putting out 250 cold. The NU does about 310, so it's pretty nice. So looking at the Wolf bonuses, it has a very flexible combination. It has both a tracking speed bonus and a fall-off bonus, which is quite nice because you can use the fall-off bonus to fight other autocannon ships. You can also use the tracking bonus to go up close against some other ships like cruisers, or ships that might have trouble tracking. The Wolf actually has a very low signature radius at 33 meters. It's really small. It's really hard to hit, and it's really easy for people to underestimate how powerful having just a 33-meter sig is. The Wolf also has a pretty decent base speed too. I do have the anti-explosive rig, which is slowing down my fit somewhat, but it still goes for 390 ms base, which is pretty nice. So it's almost the same speed as a Tech 1 frigate, and despite the plate and the armor rig, it's also not that bad in terms of speed. 2.36 is slightly slower than an NU, but it's faster than every other assault frigate that is, aside from the Jaguar. So it's actually not that bad. The plate and the armor don't slow you down so much. Thanks to the fall-off bonus too, if you're not that vulnerable to scram kiting. And yeah, overall I just find the Wolf just works really, really well. It's kind of surprising too because, 2 mids. I didn't think I'd actually like this one so much, and I was actually impressed by it. I don't think it's as good as the Harpy, the NU, and the Hawk. I don't think it's quite in that category of the assault frigates that I would say work right now on Tranquility and don't really need to be changed. It is, slightly below that tier, but it's definitely, I would say, the leader of the pack, no pun intended, in sort of the middle tier of assault frigates. One thing that's also really powerful about the Wolf is the fact that it has a 94% EM resistance, and this can actually play a big part, I think, in killing Vex and Navy issues in the south. I could definitely see this just being one of the only frigates that can actually just kill VNIs, and that's actually pretty important given how many Vex and Navy issues are actually just out and around right now. If they don't, normally they just carry Praetor 2s and then Acolyte 2 for frigates, and they just won't be able to do anything to you. and actually have a fight that like really highlights like a fight that's like almost unwinnable, but the fact that extreme resistance to EM damage just makes me like win it kind of effortlessly. So I think that's a pretty cool aspect of the Wolf too. It has pretty decent effective hit points too. 10,000 HP is not that bad, especially when you consider you still got the small Ancillary to top yourself up here and there. The only drawback of the Wolf, really, as I mentioned before, is the fact that the capacitor on it is so bad. It has less cap than a claw. Yeah, I think it's got one of the worst base caps. Like, aside from covert op ships, I think this might actually be the worst. But anyway, enjoy the clips. I had a lot of fun flying the ship, as I've mentioned a few times. Hopefully you will too. It's better than what people expect. So this first fight is kind of like the fight that I mentioned, where extreme resistances can actually just swing a fight that you normally would just never dream about winning. So to give you a bit of context, there was a Confessor, Slicer, and Corax on the other side of this gate. I burnt back and jumped, and I came back. So I was thinking, I could maybe win this fight. Like, if I go on the Corax first and kill it, they already have a Slicer and a Confessor here, and they all do EM damage. So, like, I can probably just permatank them if the Corax is dead. So, the Slicer jumps, so I kind of see my moment here. I am a bit worried because this is a rocket Corax. I looked at his ship, so potentially he could have really good DPS, but he was actually using Kadari Navy Mjolnir rocket, so he's doing pure EM damage too. So the Corax actually ends up doing almost no DPS to me, and I take him down. And with the Corax down, we just have the Confessor left, which does EM damage, and the Slicer left, which does EM damage mostly. They do a bit of thermal, but that 94% EM resistance is just killing them. Like, they can't do anything to me in this fight, which is kind of amusing. Especially, if the Slicer kites away, the way laser crystals work is the longer range crystals are more biased towards EM damage, and the closer range crystals come to sort of equal EM thermal damage. So, the Confessor that's on top of me that's shooting multi-frequency at me, he's doing a bit more thermal damage, whereas the Slicer, when he's like kiting away, he's mostly doing EM damage. So his DPS is almost negligible. The Slicer does come in, I think, when the Confessor goes down. I think maybe to try and apply more DPS, or I don't think he realized that the crystals do more thermal damage, but I don't know, maybe he came in for that reason. I don't know. But I'm able to catch him and take him down too. It's just one of those, like, really, I don't know, really cool aspects, I think, of a ship that just has, like, really polarized resistance to one damage type. It's like a fight, like a Tech 2 frigate taking on a Confessor, Slicer, and Corax would be, like, almost impossible in almost any other situation. So yeah, it's kind of interesting, and like I mentioned, the Wolf can probably, like, easily kill Ratting Vexanaviuses in the south just for that fact. So this fight is against the Hecate. I guess it's kind of interesting just to see how the fight sort of happened. There was a Cerberus and a Hecatean Scalpel sort of chasing me around, so just kind of chilling on this gate, waiting for them to show up. My plan is to try and separate them by aggression, by getting the Hecate to aggress me on one side, and then, I don't know, maybe the Scalpel will get stuck on another side. This is a bait Scalpel, by the way. I did look at him already, and he has guns on his thing, so I know he's like a pure bait fit, and I also know already that the Hecate is blaster fit because I already looked at his ship in the sort of previous part of the fight, or when they were sort of chasing me around. It's always a good idea to look at the fits, especially Hecate, because if it's railguns, you're going to be going up close. If it's blasters, you're going to be kiting. So, I kind of play a bit aggressive here. Normally I'd kite a bit further out, but, in this case, I need to kill this guy in 60 seconds before his help is going to come. I would also much rather fight this Hecate than the Scalpel, because the system that the Scalpel is in is the staging system of that alliance, whereas this is like one jump out, so, if help is coming, it just takes that bit longer to arrive. And this is also a pretty big gate, so there's a pretty decent chance of them spawning on the wrong side. In this case, I do end up getting a bit too close there. I was pretty aggressive because I wanted him to engage me. Luckily, the guy actually reloaded to null when I was kiting him at 7k. So he refitted to null, and this guy did a pretty good job of staying in sharpshooter mode to maximize his DPS. He actually did a lot of DPS. That was like a double mag stab, dual web fit. So if he was a bit luckier on the ammo, he didn't reship out of Void, then that could have ended up really badly for me, because he was able to kind of get on top of me when I started playing aggressive. After the Hecate died, I got a fight with the bait scalpel fit. The guy was actually pretty cool. He gave me a good fight earlier in a Flycatcher versus Anishka, and he's also in the Bringing Solar Back channel, so he's kind of a bro. So this guy has a really kind of weird fit. He has it's like a breacher fit, like small ancillary plus medium ancillary shield booster, while also having like 10 MN AB. So it's like a super weird like bait trap fit. Although I kind of included this clip, even though it's kind of weird and it's not really that hard of a fight. Like, he doesn't really get close to killing me. I just want to kind of demonstrate how sort of flexible the Wolf is at damaging. I'm just running like straight fusion here, and I'm not really having that many problems tracking him, even though it's a oversized AB fit, and even though he is scram kiting me very effectively. By like sort of staying 9 and 10 kilometers away from me, especially at the start. He broke my scram. He's still applying pretty decent DPS, so the fall off bonus and the tracking bonus on the Wolf just give you a lot of flexibility, and even sort of these bait scram kite fits, you can still do well against them even with your 2 mid slots, just thanks to how flexible those 2 bonuses are combined together. As this guy's a really cool bro too, so thanks for the fights. This is a real quick fight versus an artillery sweeple. They're pretty easy to kill in the Wolf, thanks to the fact that you have really powerful bonuses with the 50% sig reduction. You can generally avoid their artillery quite a lot. It's really hard for them to hit you, even when you're kind of burning straight at them, thanks to that huge bonus, and because the Wolf has the really low signature radius, as I mentioned. You can kind of just get on top of them. You have the 33 meter sig, and there's not really a whole lot they can do about it. It's really hard for them to hit you while they're trying to kite too. Obviously, this guy was in like a weird sensor booster fit, like most sweeple pilots tend to be. But even against like a more traditional sweeple that has like defensive web and sort of kiting, I think the Wolf would do very well against it, just because you have so much buffer. Like 10k EHP is actually quite a nightmare for a sweeple to get through, especially with the sig and the sig bonus. So just one quick fight to wrap things up. This fight I'm in a pretty bad shape because there was a gate camp on the other side of the gate, so I don't have any paste in my ancillary, and I'm really low cap, and I already have like heat damage on my modules, and a Daredevil's coming after me from the camp from before, probably to try and finish me off. But this just goes to show like how much buffer you actually have with the plate. That 10k buffer is really easy to underestimate, especially when someone might think that you're really low. The area starts MWDing for me at this point, but it's a bit too late. So, even with no paste, still able to just take down this Daredevil that got on top of me. And yeah, the Wolf is one of the most underestimated assault frigates, in my opinion. It's actually really, really fun. I'd recommend you give it a go, because, I got some really good fights in it. People really underestimated the Wolf, and it's actually probably one of the better AFs. Not quite Harpy NU territory in my opinion, but it's definitely up there. It's definitely much better than what people expect from it.